32 years ago today, 14 women were killed at Montreal's Polytechnique in what is considered Canada's largest mass shooting specifically targeting women. Decades later, leaders in Manitoba are speaking out about the disproportionate levels of violence women and girls still face in 2021, particularly in Indigenous and newcomer communities.
I was 16 the first time I was struck.
December 6th marks the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women in Canada. Billy Shibler, an Indigenous elder, says she grew up witnessing violence against her aunts and mother. At 19, Shibler says she married an abusive partner who physically and sexually assaulted her, and as a foster parent, a child in her care went missing and was later found on the outskirts of Winnipeg, dumped in a ditch, beaten and dead, she says.
Today is an important time for us to acknowledge that there is so much violence that still continues to be perpetrated against our women, our Two-Spirit, and our trans sisters.
According to the Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability, in 2020, 160 women and girls were killed by violence, an increase up from 118 deaths in 2019. Indigenous women and girls are 16 times more likely to be murdered or go missing compared with white women in Canada, according to the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. In 2020, 1 in 5 women killed in Canada was First Nations, Métis, or Inuit.
The time is now. This is a new starting point. Our task to work together is urgent.
Diane Redsky, Executive Director of the Mamaway Wichita Center, says significant work to end gender-based violence is needed for all women in Canada, but specifically for Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirited, and LGBTQUIA+ people.
We have a shared responsibility for this success. Our lives literally depend on it.
As the pandemic hit, violence against women became its own pandemic.
Humaira Jalil, founder of Healthy Muslim Families, says the pandemic created a surge in violence against females, immigrants, refugees, and specifically newcomer Muslim women. Jalil says Muslim women experience greater levels of violence due to lack of understanding of their legal rights as a spouse and immigrant, and lack of representation for Muslim women in the justice system.
From our community leaders and religious leaders, we require that they do more to teach our communities that there is no place in any religion for domestic violence.
At a ceremony being held for the 14 women murdered in Montreal, Manitoba's newly elected and first female premier spoke about the tragedy of that day and the violence impacting women in the province.
There are also the women whose names are never made public, the women who are missing. Their deaths still haven't been discovered. I offer my prayers to the family and friends of these women.
In Winnipeg, Mark Neufeld, City News.